Hey everybody, Tag Life Done Free. Hey, today I did a interesting interview with a young lady whose husband is currently in jail, and he's being accused of some pretty heinous crimes in anti-government, establishment type things. And I found all the articles online that references this case, and so I'm going to share them with you guys as well, so you can get both sides of the story. As a freedom journalist, I think it's important that everything is put out there. I have no ties to this family. I didn't know them prior to doing this interview. I'd never had any contact with them. I just got in contact through another YouTuber that I know that said, "Hey, you should listen to this story," and I found it fascinating enough. I think when you look through the case, you'll decide for yourself whether or not there's consistencies or inconsistencies. And again, my job is just to bring the whole story. But before we get into it, I want to make something very, very clear from the beginning. If anybody sets out to build anything, devices, or to own things, or to do those kinds of things with the intent of hurting people, whether that be someone who works, for the feds or not, right? Anybody, they're wrong and they should absolutely be in jail. However, I also know that that side, the other side that's fighting us, is large, and they have a lot of control and they have a lot of power, and they will yield and use that power for their own benefit. And so again, I think it's important that we get to see both sides. And so if you're interested in what happened to this young lady, if you're interested in the case, come on, let's check it out. Well, guys, so here's the article from the Washington Post. Excuse me. And it says North Carolina man offered explosives training knowing trainees wanted to kill those people in charge. And it went on to say that the website for Tackleberry Solutions tells prospective customers that it teaches wartime military tactics for home defense and offers some free material. But the powers that be alleged that the organization's trainer was up to more sinister things. And so it also goes on to allege that he knew that the recipient of training was planning, again, bad things. And so in this release, the powers that be announced that it had charged this young man from North Carolina with teaching other individuals how to build, not good things, knowing that they intended, again, to create problems. According to court documents, the powers that be path to him began after a dramatic 2020 chase and shootout in New York State between the powers that be and it's interesting how they put this right here. They don't even know what's going on, and this stuff always makes me question. But if they use the word suspected extremist, and how did they? Anyway, that would be a red flag to me. Investigators searching the home and the vehicle of this person found lots of bad things, and you can read this right here on the screen. And then later on, a confident informant working with the powers that be reached out to Tackleberry and requested some of their information. And you'll hear about this case. You'll hear more about this because I really think this is a big part, in my opinion, of the case. Again, someone, coming from someone who wasn't there. And guys, this is super important. I tell you guys this, I wasn't there. All I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the powers that be's version, an interpretation of it, and then I'm going to show you the family's version of it. And, you guys can come up with your own conclusions. But anyway, again, he provided some training to this prospective bad guy, and it turns out that he wasn't all that. And again, you'll hear that, kind of in the interview. But this guy right here, right, Joshua Blessed, was who actually got in trouble, who actually committed a crime. And then when they did a bunch of research into him, they found ties to this training place, and it was kind of all downhill from there. And so again, I urge you, I'm going to link this article in the description underneath there, so you can absolutely read it for yourself. But anyway, so this is the Washington Post version of it. And then the other thing I wanted to show you guys here is here's an article. Um, Now, this is actually the chase that went on. And again, it didn't have anything to do with the training facility. This was one of the students who then later on got into, some chase, or they alleged there was a firefight. Nobody was hurt except the suspect who was killed. And, they go on to talk about how when they, went to his house, they found, you know, um, things that were bad, and cash, and it's interesting to me. They don't really go into everything that they claim that they found is legal. I mean, you can have cash, right? Now they talked about right here. I don't know if you can even see this. They talked about things like that, but they don't really go into any real anything specific about what those actually are. And I know that in some of the articles they mentioned things like tannerite, which you can buy at Tractor Supply, right? So I don't know the validity of these things because I can't find anything about it, and I probably never will be able to. But anyway, this is the article about the guy that actually got into the high speed chase. And again, I'll link this article below into the description as well. See, like this is what I was talking about right here. So like this, right, would be, those are all legal. This one certainly would not be, but again, they don't go into any description about what it is and what it isn't, so I can't really comment on it. But anyway, so this is how they got it all tied together, and again, I will link all of this together, and that was the actual suspect right there. Hello, hello, hello. Hey, I got a really special guest today. So we're going to be visiting with Amy Arthur, and I'm going to let Amy tell her story because I cannot give it justice at all. But, I know many of us sit back, behind the scenes thinking about, how we can go out there and live free. But you got to be careful, you push the boundaries, those boundaries can get you in trouble. And before we start this video, I want to be very, 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 very clear. I do not condone in any way any type of violent overthrowing, uprising, any of those kind of things. But I 100% support our rights to protect our freedoms. And you guys know I'm a pro Second Amendment guy. I'm a pro, self-reliance guy, and we have those rights, and we should have the right to defend those. And so, I guess without further ado, I'm going to bring Amy in. We're going to hear her story, and I'm going to try to ask some hard questions if I can. Let's introduce Miss Amy Arthur. Hello, Amy. How are you?
Hi, I'm okay. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's morning.
Yes.
If you can see behind me, my windows are black. That means it's still dark here. No, it's good. Well, Amy, let's just start at the top and tell everybody who you are. Let's start right there, and then tell us a little bit about kind of what you're going through.
Well, do you want me to just give you like maybe a brief overview of the story, or?
Yeah, please, and then I'll ask questions.
Okay. Well, first I wanted to thank you for allowing me to share my story. What I've got to share is actually going to sound like it came out of a fiction book, but it's very real. And I just honestly feel that I see a lot of other people joining us if it's not exposed. So, to start, on May 5th of 2021, my husband taught a man how to protect his family from an unlawful invasion. From this $20 conversation, the FBI construed it to say that my husband was teaching others how to kill federal agents. Then on July 29th, 2021, 6 police officers arrived. I mean, this wasn't even 2 months after. And they arrived unannounced to forcibly remove my 2 oldest children. All of my rights as a parent were stripped without due process. And to this day, I can only guess where they are. Drug addicts have gotten better treatment. And then on January 22nd, 2022, nearly a year after the event of the supposed crime, the FBI arrested my husband. Our home was raided by dozens of FBI agents with armored vehicles, and it was completely ransacked. I was handcuffed in front of my 3 small children. My children were taken to one vehicle. I was taken to another and questioned for hours. Thousands of dollars worth of property was stolen or destroyed, and they even took our T-shirts that had our business logo on them, and they took my journal. They even took every digital picture that I had of my family. So the only pictures I had left of my two kids that were taken were what few pictures I had printed out. On July 10th, 2023, there was a 3-day trial that was held against my husband, and it was our word against 6 special agents. And between every witness, they would extensively question the career background of these special agents and just go into extreme detail about how amazing these people were and how much education that they had to have and experience to get to their position. And then after about 20 minutes of their expressing how amazing they were, the judge would then give special instructions to the jury that because these people were experts, they could share their opinion without fact. And they were experts, so you should consider their opinion as fact. And by the time they were done, the jury didn't even look at all the evidence and got him guilty on all 9 counts, despite alarming evidence to the contrary. So then on November 30th, just a few days ago, actually, I got word that the judge has refused every suggestion by the intermediary department for sentencing until they labeled him as a murderer and a terrorist. Our attorney has adamantly objected that they've not met the criteria for that. However, the judge refuses to acknowledge their own rules. Then my husband got a letter from his attorney's firm asking him to reach out to friends and family, send letter to the judge begging for mercy because he likes it when people grovel. So anyways, after they took my husband, I found myself all alone, living completely off of donations with a set of twins that were 3 and my other son that was 5. And I was actually very sick when they took my husband, and I could barely stand. So, and then doing some more research after they took him, you see ultimately with a 97% conviction rate, it was already apparent that they were playing a rigged game. Alarmingly, the poor treatment of my husband has continued to astound me. Since January 2021, he has yet to see the sun. There's only one window out of the main room, and it's too high to even look out of. They have severe confinement. For several months now, he's only been allowed out once out of his small cell for a larger different room for like maybe an hour during the day. And sometimes it's like 3 days between the 1 hour that he gets out. Now, just recently, they've been merciful enough to let him out, twice a day when they feel like it. But there was one time where he was in his cell for 7 hours when it was flooded, and before they would let him out. And then when they let him out, instead of being able to take a shower and clean up, he had to spend his 1 hour out cleaning his cell. So there's also no place to exercise. They can't have any books. There's no access to a library or any type of educational resource. He can't have in-person visits. I'm not even allowed to send him pictures of his family. The nutrition has been really poor. His body is now burning muscle in order to stay alive. He's required to beg for soap and pay for toilet paper. And again, I want you to know that this is real. I am not exaggerating on any point. This isn't like he's being held in China somewhere. He's actually here in America being treated like this. And to add insult to injury, they've actually scheduled his sentencing on the day of our anniversary, which is December 18th. The judge continues to favor the government on all sides and refuses to dismiss the case despite countless constitutional arguments.
Yeah, there is so much there. So let's kind of go back all the way back to the beginning a little bit. So you said that your husband had a $20 conversation about how to defend one's family. And so you guys know, I'm going to link the news articles from this case. I will link it into the description. So if you guys want to see that perspective or what they wrote or any of that stuff, we'll make sure that's available. But I've read them. So what do you mean by he was teaching someone to defend his family? What does that mean?
Well, we had a business where we teach home defense, and it was for wartime scenarios. So it's like, if you have a wartime scenario, let's say China or Russia were going to come, they're not going to play nice. They're not going to be joking around when they're at your door. So you have to use very careful methods in order to protect your family. And these were defensive, not offensive. It was just, your life is in danger. This is what you do to protect your home, kind of teaching.
Hey, and so everybody knows also, and I should have said this in the beginning, but Amy and her family are working also through an appeals process. So I may ask questions that Amy can't answer because of the case, and I've just instructed Amy just to say punt. I can't answer that. So just everybody knows that's on my instruction to do that, because we don't want to jeopardize anything as we go through this. So when you talk about this guy, so basically, if anything I say, Amy, is wrong, I mean, just say you're wrong and this is not right, because again, you know way more about the case than I do. But from what I understand of the case, from reading it, or at least their interpretation of the case that you can read online, says that basically there was a bad guy who did some training with your husband. He went on, got into a high-speed chase, ended up being in a shootout and was killed. Then when they went to that guy's house and searched his phone, they found that he had done training with your husband, which is what linked them together. And then this is what started this whole entire process. Is that semi-accurate?
That's their story, but there is more. That's there.
Okay,
That is.
Tell me, because all I know is what I read. So
Okay, so their initial investigation to us was not with this guy. Their investigation started because of my ex. And he started this investigation with the FBI against my husband when he lost the custody battle that we were fighting. And that was when he sent his complaint into the FBI. From what I don't know the exact date he sent his complaint in, but he blatantly lied to the FBI about several things. He's blatantly lied to the police. He's tried to get us killed, telling stories to the police for safety checks, making them think that we would hurt them if they showed up. And my husband has spent many conversations with the police officers explaining to them that we are peaceful and that they are welcome to come over and that we would talk to them. And it was all because of things that my ex were saying. Now, as far as in regards to this bad guy, let me give you some background. He's actually over 60 years old. And they
didn't say this.
He is not a native. He's from Russia. And so he grew up in a different government. He was raised with a lot more oppression. And so there's also, you've got a language barrier because he's not native. And you also he's over 60. And he was raised in Russia. And I don't know his story of why he came to America, but I got the impression he did because he wanted freedom. And he was a big advocate of freedom. And so when we met, we were talking about how China and Russia, those were his biggest fears, was China and Russia. That China and Russia were going to come in, and he wanted to help his community be safe from an invasion. And so when he came to learn from us, my husband spent a lot of time teaching him that your government, like the local law enforcement, is your asset. You use them to help you when China and Russia are at your door. It's when you work together as a community that you can fight, you can do these wartime tactics. And that was one of the things my husband constantly drilled into him was the local sheriff and stuff, that they're your friend. You work with them. Okay. So we sold some books to him, and he worked with my husband for like a week. And when he's a truck driver, okay, so he's working and he's got our books in his truck because we worked with him. And my husband was teaching him about how to protect about China in Russia. And he didn't learn. Let me also clarify. When he came to work with my husband, he wasn't learning again, we're all defense, not offensive. And my husband took one look at him when he came, and he's like, you are not going to be able to be a soldier. You're to be honest, you didn't stay in shape. You don't have the right physical stamina. You're not a soldier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to be a leader and how to work with your community so that you can help them bond together and work with law enforcement so that when China and Russia come, that you can help save your community. So he didn't even really teach him anything that a soldier would need to know, because he wasn't fit to be a soldier. And so he was working and he was driving, I guess, up north, and there was a minor traffic violation. So they try to pull him over. Now, I can only theorize why he reacted the way he did. But if you add in the fact that he's foreign, he doesn't speak our language as well as a native would, and he was raised in Russia where the government is totally different, and he's got this police officer trying to pull him over, I legitimately think that he was in fear for his life. He didn't have a full comprehension of he all he would have had to do is pull over and talk to the officer. I'm sorry, officer, is there a problem? And just peacefully resolve the issue. But instead, he reacted by trying to get away. So he wasn't even trying to hurt anybody. He wasn't even attacking anybody. All he was doing was working. He was just driving down the road. And instead of pulling over, he tried to get away. And that doesn't work. And so when that didn't work, he came out shooting. And he never hurt a police officer. He never landed any hits. Nobody got injured. They killed him. End of story. And so, again, they weren't stopping a threat. He wasn't going actively to hurt somebody. He was over 60. He was working when they did it. And
yeah, so I had read in there somewhere that he had been on their radar for a while. Are you saying this is not true?
It's very likely true, because he was very open about his unhappiness with the state of our country.
Okay.
But most of what I saw from him was he was worried about Russia and China.
Yeah. So, and thank you for clarifying. And again, you're going to have to do this 100 times, because so far all the information that I know is what I read in studying for having this conversation with you today, Amy. So thank you for that. So I'm gonna go back through that again. So, a guy, okay, I'll correct myself, came to you guys for tactical type training. Your husband had said, hey, let's work on leadership, because you're an older guy and you're not going to be anywhere near as effective. Spend some time together. Fast forward, the guy is driving down the road, gets in a minor traffic accident, and for whatever reason flips out. They get into a shootout and he loses his life. Is that
It was just a minor traffic violation. There wasn't an accident or anything. I don't know what it was that caused them to pull him over.
So then, going forward from that statement, again, what I read, and again, I am regurgitating, Amy, to you is what I read. This is why I'm hoping you fill in the places, right? Because this is, if someone researches it, this is the same things they're going to read.
Right.
And so the good news is I did read all of them, right, in preparation. So I can at least ask some questions. But anyway, so then they said that, or they alleged in there that after going to his home and looking through his phone, he found out that they had done some training with your husband, and specifically IED bomb making, that type of training, which is what caused them to bring heat onto you guys. But what's interesting already, that I've already noticed the inconsistency, is that they had already started on you guys because of your ex, and and I'm assuming he sent some stuff in saying, hey, it's not safe for the kids, is what I'm assuming happened, something along those lines.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what he said. I haven't been privileged to that information.
Yeah, but what the stuff online says is that that's how they got a hold of you guys, is through the stuff that they found on his phone and in his home. Does that, do you understand it as well?
So what they said, what I was told, was that they found our books in his truck, and they had saw that he had trained with us. So we were, because he trained with us, and they found his books in his, our books in his truck. That was their story of why they decided to target us. But like you said, that's not accurate.
Okay, so they also allege in there that your husband knew that this guy was going to use this information to kill federal agents. That's what it says, and it's consistent in every single article that I read. So can you talk to that? I mean, if you got a punt, just say punt. No big deal. But
well, if you'll read some of our articles, we had a blog before my husband was taken. We have one that actually says the importance of working with your local law when you've got an invasion, when you've got a wartime scenario. Your best friends are going to be your local sheriff and your neighbors. And that was our main motto, was work together, and you guys can, a community is much safer than one person by themselves. That was the lone wolf dies, is what we teach. Mm-hmm. And so, and the other thing is my husband is a prior police officer, or sheriff's deputy. I can't remember. I think it was sheriff's deputy, but he was a prior sheriff's deputy, and he spent years in the military. I mean, we're not anti-government, okay? He's risked his life to protect our country.
Yeah. So when you talked about your blog, I'm hoping will you send me those links too?
I can.
I'll make sure that when I put them all in there, so that people can get all the information that they're interested in through this. So what you're saying is there are allegations that he knew that this would be used for bad purposes. It's just simply not true. That's just a made up.
That's an accusation. That's wrong. That's
just 100% made up. Okay.
That was part of his training, was to teach this man how to work with the sheriff. That was what we were teaching him how to do.
Okay, so this case, I've got it pulled up on my screen here. Some of their kind of stuff. So they talk about how Arthur, that after the dramatic case and the shootout in New York State, investigators searching the home and vehicle of the guy who was shot, the Russian guy, they found improvised explosive devices and an instruction manual from your husband bearing your husband's name. So that's what that article says. So let's talk about this confidential informant, because this seemed kind of wishy-washy to me when I was reading the article a little bit. And so, but just under full disclosure, what they are claiming is that a confidential informant working with the FBI later reached out to the company requesting one of its free PDFs. So they're saying they reached out to you guys looking for a PDF, to which your husband allegedly began to offer more. According to these charges, your husband provided someone with training on explosive devices, knowing that the person intended to use the information, blah, blah, blah. This type of behavior is criminal and unacceptable, blah, blah, blah. So tell us about the informant.
So that PDF that he's talking about, you don't have to, that was a opt-in offer that we had, where you can give us your email address and it would automatically send you a free download. And that free download was a sample of what we taught, but a lot of it was taken out because it was a sample. So it was like, this is a rundown of what you can learn. We're not going to actually teach it to you, but here's a rundown. If you'd like to learn more, you can it was a marketing thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you're offering a business, what you do is you give information out and hey, this is what we teach. And so you could just type in your email and it would give you this download, and the download didn't have anything on it that you could really use. It was just a sample. He did reach out to us for training. And the story that he got was he was worried about his family. The story that we got was that he was worried about his family. And we teach wartime tactics, home defense. Now, let me clarify. These are wartime tactics. So we're talking about a situation where not normal society applies. This is SHTF. This is not like, oh, I'm just going about my day and I just feel like being an asshole. Sorry, language.
No, you're fine.
I mean, this is not, I'm not going to use this to hurt anybody. This is, if everything is going crazy and I'm in fear of my life and I feel like they're going to kill my family and burn down my house, this is what I do. Okay, that's what we teach. And so this guy was worried about his family, and he was specifically worried about the red flag law, which completely destroys due process. Mm-hmm. And so actually during this training, what they didn't even cover, and I tried to get our attorney to do this, but he didn't do it, was point out that there was audio in the course of the conversation where this informant was trying to rile my husband up and get him to say things to the, negative things about the government. And he said, no, you don't do that. This is home defense only. And he even told me after the conversation, he's like, that guy was an informant. He's not. And he's like, look, you're not going to get from me what you want. I'm not going to say what you want me to say. You don't, this is for your defense of your family. This is not you don't go take this information and hurt anybody with it. And this was after they had this $20 conversation. This guy was getting ready to leave, and he was trying to rile my husband up. And he was like, no, we don't do those things. This is to protect your family. Look, I can tell you're an informant. You need to just leave. That was literally what he said. And I was like, why can't we point that out as evidence? Because he was acknowledging that I'm on to you. I know what you're trying to get me to do, and I'm not going to do it. This is home defense only.
And you guys have audio of this?
Well, there's supposed to be audio of this. We didn't record the audio. It was the informant. But if the informant supposedly recorded the entire conversation, then that should have been in that should have been in their audio. But I have yet to, nobody has said, they didn't even touch it in the trial.
Yeah, so the informant records the conversation, and that recording is not brought up as evidence in the court case.
Well, they mentioned it, but they never used it. They never put him on the stand. They didn't have him questioned. Why
in the world did your attorney not make that become public?
Well, there were parts of the recording that they used, but they took bits and pieces out of it, and you know how they are.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So when I in between recesses and stuff, when I'd asked the attorney, like, what are you doing? The answer I got was, oh, they'll see it in the evidence. The jury has to listen to everything. They'll see it in the evidence. Now, I want to make something clear here. While I'm never ever going to entirely trust the attorney, I will say that he has done more for us than any attorney ever has. So I'm not dissing him. I'm not dissing his firm. I would have approached it a different way. There's a lot of things I'm disappointed about, but I don't want to. My husband really likes his attorney, and I respect that. So I'm not.
And I'm glad that you like him, and I'm glad that he's done a lot of things, for you guys. And maybe I don't understand something, but the whole bunch of this case rests on this informant. And if that conversation was recorded, how is it not relevant? Makes no sense. That makes no sense to me. I mean, now maybe I'm not an attorney, in fairness, right? But
there was a lot of evidence that I had asked. I was like, why don't you point this out? Why don't you say this? Why don't you, well, this happened. What about this? And every time I asked them, what I was told was, oh, the jury will go through all the evidence. When this is done, they'll see that. They'll see that. And the jury didn't look at the evidence.
Yeah, which means that if something don't change along the way, I mean, this seems like a whole bunch of a setup to me. Is the freedom of, I don't know if you know this or not, but the Freedom of Information Act, once he is sentenced to whatever ends up happening, do you know, will you have access through the Freedom of Information Act to get that? Or because it's a federal case, will that be sealed and gone forever? Do you know the answer to that?
I don't know.
Yeah, ouch. Okay, so see if I can find that spot that they were talking about. They also allege a lot in here that your husband was very pro militia and all of those things. Did the militia play a role for you guys in any of this, or is that just all more?
So that theory comes about from our motto, which is when you have a wartime scenario, you need to work together. And you need to have people that you're already your neighbors are your friends. Your neighbors are those are the people that you call when you have Russians at your door, because the 911 system is going to be overwhelmed. So as far as the term militia goes, we don't associate with militias because a lot of them have already been infiltrated with. That's a setup. There's good militias out there, but they're hard to find, and we weren't associated with any of them. And yeah,
Winters makes several mentions to this. Like I'm reading a line in here, and it talks. This is from the Washington Post, and it says that it was unclear on Monday what Arthur knew about Blessed's plans, which I find so fascinating because that completely contradicts information in other articles that I've read and that said that your husband knew it would be used for bad purposes. But right here in their own words, it says it was unclear whether your husband knew about the plans. The affidavit alleges that investigators recovered from Blessed's home a manual that your husband had written called the Quick Reaction Force Modern Day Minuteman Improvised Explosives, as well as 14 intact explosive devices that appeared to be identical to those found in the manual.
Well, we do have an explosives book, but we didn't. He doesn't build those things with people. That's one of those on your own kind of things. I mean, you can get that stuff for free online. You can download.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Let me see here. Yeah, and your attorney, Damon, just refuses to comment pretty much in all these articles, at least. Has he become more public about that?
So that's a different attorney. He actually royally screwed our family over.
So so Damon is no longer the attorney. Okay, it just says he didn't want to reach out. So it goes on to say after the FBI informant reached out requesting a PDF from Arthur to prevent being flagged or shut. Arthur allegedly responded, to prevent being flagged or shut down, I've had to keep parts of this information off the internet, especially since explosives is such a touchy topic. The two continued talking, according to the affidavit, with the informant expressing interest in militaristic force training. Yeah, well, with what they're talking about in the Biden administration, that might be important, hadn't it? Arthur responded, according to the affidavit. Any disagreement with that? I'm just covering the article.
Well, no. So as far as that goes, what he's referring to is the instability of our country. Mm-hmm. We're sitting ducks when you have weak leadership. Mm-hmm. And you can't tell me there's not going to be outside forces. Look at China that are going to take advantage of weak leadership. So that's not just a reference to our country. We're sitting ducks.
Well, what I think is so interesting about this in our conversation so far is many of the things that the conversations that your husband has had or that you have had are probably conversations that go on in survivalist and prepping communities all over the country, right? I mean, it would be I don't want to say, probably a pretty normal, I guess, conversation. And how dangerous is it to have those conversations with, an informant, right?
Well, where's the crime in expressing frustration is what I'm wondering.
There is no crime. But the problem is, and you could teach write a book on this and teach a class on this. It's not about what you say; it's about what they report you say.
Right.
Right. Just like you talked about the audio recording, which blows me away that there's an audio recording from this informant that the jury's never heard. Win or lose, they should hear the whole thing.
They didn't listen to it. They only listened to what the government wanted them to hear.
On May the 5th, the FBI informant met with Arthur at his North Carolina home and talked about the Bureau having been on his own residence. Arthur told him he could stand and fight or be not exactly where you're supposed to be, according to the affidavit. Arthur then explained how to properly place an IED throughout his property, the importance of creating the fatal funnel and setup and the use of remote activated firearms, and how to evade arrest after killing members of law enforcement.
So again, you're talking about wartime tactics. This is not when normal society applies.
Yeah, well, and I think they make some big accusations in here, right? They may really make it sound like your husband was plotting to, kill a whole bunch of, police officers or whatever it was.
Well, look at the length that they went to make this first guy look like a monster. They're painting a picture here because they're trying to make it look as awful as they can. And so this is where it's really alarming for me, is because if you step back and look at this, it's a setup. You can see them setting the stage for more. He's a white male veteran. If they can make him look like a monster, how many more people does that enable them to target?
Now, I have to touch on this, and I know this might be getting a little bit into the case, and you may not be able to answer it, but they talk about after this informant and after they come and raided your guys' house, that they found multiple IEDs and components, suppressors, gunpowder, which they specifically list tannerite, which I think is hilarious because every farmer in the country has tannerite in their house. But anyway, bulk gunpowder, anybody that would reload would have gunpowder in their house. And all of these things are purchased legally at any sporting goods store. Around my house, you can get a Tractor Supply house. But anyway, do you want to just address any of that?
Well, I wanted to add, when you mentioned that, it reminded me of something. One of the evidences that they put during trial was my husband's grandfather's antique rifle that doesn't even work. And they paraded like anything that they could in front of the jury to make us look like monsters. And I'll add, like you said, I can't go into a lot of detail on it because we're still trying to appeal, but you can define bug chemical as an explosive.
Right.
So to be clear, there was nothing in our house that would have hurt a child because we have children, and there was nothing in our house that was obtained through nefarious means, and there was nothing in our house that was designed to be offensive. It was all home defense. And that's about as much as I can go into it on.
Sorry, I think it's also interesting that they go on to talk about how, from your guys' website, that you guys contemplate possible legal consequences from the training, asking those who request the PDF to affirm I am responsible, and the disclaimers that you guys put out there that you guys aren't responsible, for what happens. And it's interesting how you, in an effort to go, and this happens in law all the time, in an effort to kind of protect yourself, it actually kind of hurts you a little bit because they say, okay, look, they acknowledged there was something that was wrong, right? I love how they twist stuff like that.
You know what's interesting with that? I tried to get our attorney to put as evidence our disclaimer. Mm-hmm. And our disclaimer was lengthy because I had done some research on and used some legal help on so when you've got somebody that sells firearms, they have a disclaimer on there. And I was looking at their disclaimer, and they had a lot of stuff like you had to be over 18, you had to have no criminal background, you had to not have any violent history. There was a lengthy list of qualifications that you had to have in order to be able to buy from them. And I had put a lot of that, like, into the disclaimer, and also when I had used the legal help to generate it, which was you have to agree that you realize that there's laws in your land and that we are teaching wartime tactics. So this is SHTF scenario only. And that if you use this outside of SHTF, you're breaking, you got to watch your local laws and not violate any of this. So you got to know what you're doing. So we're not the lawyer. It's not our job to tell you what's legal and not legal. Our job is to tell you how to survive when you're afraid your house is going to get burned and your wife is going to get raped. That is what we're trying to teach you. And you've got to know it's your discretion to decide how you're going to use this information, because we don't provide legal advice, was basically the point of the disclaimer. And when I was like, well, why don't we put this? Why don't we tell the jury this stuff? Why don't they know these things? And I'm trying to remember what I was told, but I was thinking it was, well, that stuff's not really going to help you anyways, was pretty much what I was told. And I was shocked because I thought that was the basis of having the disclaimer, was
right
to be a disclaimer. Okay,
right.
So the fact that before this informant we would even talk to them, he had to agree to all these terms, that he wasn't going to use it to break any laws or hurt any. It even said in the disclaimer, we don't advocate the use of this against the innocent, to include federal agents. It said that in the disclaimer, and he had to agree to it before he could get any of our products. And yet they wouldn't allow us to address that in the court.
Yeah, and you got that, and you got the recording of the informant, which I think both of those are super important. But the problem with the disclaimer is that what it says is you recognize that it's dangerous material. But I think it's also important to note there is no law, correct me if I'm wrong on this, and you've been in all through the court, there is no law that prevented your husband from doing what he did.
So I don't know. So here's the thing. Do you think that there's a legit law that can tell you can't teach somebody? And so here's the thing. What he was teaching was not illegal. What they're saying was illegal was that he was plotting to kill federal agents.
Correct. I think I just want to make the distinction that what your husband's business, he wasn't breaking the law running that business. There was no law that prevented him from doing what he was doing. That the case is about the plotting of, right, not
Right. It
about his
wasn't
actual business. Yeah.
it wasn't what my husband was going to do. It was what they were claiming the informant was going to do. So my husband knowingly taught this guy when he knew he was going to use it to hurt people is what they're claiming. And this guy was just, he was worried about his family was the story that we got.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't there for the conversation. I don't know what was said. All I know is when my husband talked to me, he would express frustration. He's like, look, I had to tell the guy to leave because I wasn't going to tell him, I wasn't going to talk bad about hurting any. This is home defense. This is all this is home defense.
Yeah, which is so important why that recording has to be heard. Right? I mean, this is a critical part because this case falls apart without that informant. Right? Well, I mean, that informant's a huge part of this case, in my opinion. Do you agree, disagree?
Here's my argument. My argument is that this should never have even gone to trial because that's literally all they had was the intent of the informant. And it wasn't what my husband was teaching. It wasn't the manuals, nothing. It was the intent of the informant. And discount the fact that he had this disclaimer sign that he wasn't going to use this to hurt federal law enforcement.
Yeah.
So, I mean, their argument is very, very weak. And it really never should have gone to trial. We have a serious case of bias here with this judge. I mean, he's been ignoring our motions and our objections, and he sides with the government on everything. Well, see, the other argument I had is they had these articles ready to be published before they even, I mean, how can you have something already written the second that somebody's arrested? You've had to have written it before.
Yeah.
And they blasted all this stuff nationwide. You can't tell me that's not going to poison the jury pool.
Mm-hmm.
So here they are making him, they've got this elaborate picture painted. And you can't tell me that instance with the truck driver did they fail to recognize that he was a truck driver and that he was working and that it wasn't just, oh, he was going to hurt somebody. It was a routine, it was like a small traffic violation. Like they don't tell you all those things.
No.
And
I didn't read that anywhere.
They're painting this horrible picture and it's actually very disturbing.
Yeah, man, I would really, really, really work as hard as you could work to get that recording out because I think a whole bunch hinges on it,
Well, see, I don't have access to it. I was never able to listen to it. My husband was, and I asked him where the part was where he had said, and I'd have to ask him again, but I don't think he found it. Here's the thing. What's stopping them from cutting the recording off early?
Of course. Nothing.
And you can't prove that there's stuff missing because they didn't take it out from in between. They took the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, first of all, forensics can tell you that it's been cut. Right. If they would spend as much money trying to protect your innocence or your freedom as they do trying to prosecute you, they could absolutely find that it's been cut. Right. I mean, they have that ability, but I just think that's so crazy that audio tape that should have been heard start to finish. Either way.
Well, I want to be clear that I wasn't there during the conversation, and I don't know exactly what was said. But my main argument is, why couldn't we teach this guy how to defend his family?
Yeah.
The conversation wasn't, this is what you go, this is who you attack, and this is the building that you go after. No, this is, you're in your home, you're minding your own business, and somebody's coming to you to cause you harm.
Yeah.
How is that a crime?
Yeah, well, that's why I said I wanted to make sure I stated that there was nothing in your husband's business model or what he was doing there that I'm aware of is illegal in any way. Right? He would that. Well,
they even acknowledged that they acknowledged that it wasn't what he was teaching. It was the intent of the one he was teaching.
Yeah, well, because it says in every one of the articles that I read out there that the problem is your husband was in on it, that he was aware that there was bad stuff going to happen and he did it anyway. And so, again, that's why I think the recording is so important. I won't beat a dead horse, but I think that's super, super important. Let's talk real quick about afterwards. So your husband is arrested. How long has it been since he's he's been in jail now 2 years.
It'll be 2 years in January.
Yeah. And so you had mentioned earlier that they had come and taken your older children and you didn't know where they were, but yet you have your younger children. How is it that they don't feel your older children are safe, but they feel your younger children are safe?
So CPS wasn't involved when they took my older kids. It was a custody dispute.
Okay.
And my ex had actually tried to get all my kids taken. Like, I've had my house investigated countless times, and he'd have safety checks called in. Like, we'd have, like I said, police officers showing up at our place, and my husband would have to have a conversation with them that they're not in any danger and we wouldn't hurt them and they're welcome to come over. And so we had proven many, many times that our home was our home was safe and that we were not a danger to the kids. So the whole taking my kids thing goes from a custody dispute, and I was never subpoenaed to it. The most that I got that something was up was an email from the opposing attorney saying that they had requested a court hearing. And it wasn't from the courthouse, it was from the opposing side. That was a request for a court date. We would like to have a court date. And so we had checked and we were like, okay, well, when you have a court date, that information doesn't come from the opposing party. That information comes from the courthouse and they have to serve you. And so we checked and like, okay, well, did the laws change? Like, no, the laws didn't change. You have to have a signature from the judge. You have to be subpoenaed and the courthouse has to issue the date. So we're like, okay, well, it looks like we're going through this again. This is the second time he's taken my kids. First time I was able to prove it was wrong. Okay, here we go again.
Okay, so the older kids has to do with something different besides this case.
Yes.
So they don't feel that your kids are in danger. Is really what I was getting at.
Well, I don't like where they're at, but I can't.
Yeah, no, what I mean is the younger kids that are still in your home, the state or the feds are not alleging that they're not safe.
No, and I've been investigated. They started the investigation all over again after they indicted my husband, and they tried to take my kids again, and they weren't able to.
So what happens now? Where are you guys at now in the process? Tell everybody what's going on right now.
We're just waiting for the appeal. The sentencing is on the 18th, and they're probably going to give him life. I mean, our judge he wants to hang my husband up. Yeah, nobody's been hurt. Nobody's been harmed yet. They're going to try to give him life.
Are they trying to get life for him?
They're going to give him life.
Yeah, which is 20 plus 25 years.
This judge would not accept anything less than life. And he's actually known for doing stuff like that to people, maxing out their sentences.
Yeah.
So, they've also officially labeled him, well, they're going to at least try to label him as a murderer and a terrorist. And our attorney has argued that he doesn't meet the basis for your what you're charging him with. And what he was told was that's not applicable to this case. But there's stuff in the 4th district that directly applies to our case that's being ignored. Like, this should never even have gone to trial, and all of it's just being ignored. This doesn't apply, is what they're told.
Yeah, I didn't know you could be convicted of a murder if somebody didn't die. I didn't know that. Now, the terrorist thing, I mean, I can understand that they could label somebody a terrorist without somebody dying, but I don't see how you could label somebody a murderer without somebody dying.
Well, I guess from what I understand, their excuse is he was plotting to murder, but... Okay,
so attempted?
Yeah, but where's the evidence? Yeah. Like, even in the trial, where's your evidence that we were plotting?
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah, well, they make a lot of accusations in there. And, that's why I wanted to make sure that I read them for the audience and gave you a chance, if we could, to discuss them, because if you just take this case on what's posted at Fox News or the Washington Post, it paints a pretty ugly piece. And there's a lot of things that you shared with me today that I didn't know in there that really makes me even question some of that a little bit more, because it just doesn't make sense. There's a lot of things, just like with the truck driver guy, they make that sound like there's a high-speed chase with a big shootout and, everyone's hurt. And they make this seem like it was this, much bigger thing than than clearly what it was. And yeah, that's insane. So you guys are waiting on the appeals. So you're presuming he's going to be convicted and going to spend some time, obviously, in prison. And you guys are going to appeal. So what's the appeal process for you guys? Can you get a different judge?
I hope so. I don't think we'll have a chance unless we can get a different judge. From what I understand, this judge is known for ignoring the Constitution. So honestly, I wonder if the crazier this gets, the easier it will be for them just to. When you go to the appeal, it's going to be so obvious that we were railroaded. I was just thinking, I don't know. There's two things that I was hoping. One is that, like Kyle Rittenhouse, if the public eye was on this, then they couldn't ignore their own rules.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I was wondering was, I was hoping that it would be so obvious that this was messed up that they're not going to want to keep any of it, because that's what happened with my ex. It was so obvious. The first time he took my kids, all it took was getting a different judge, and they dismissed all of it because it was so crazy.
I hope that we can help you get some publicity on it. But have you tried like reaching out to more constitutional based attorneys like Chris Ann Hall, or, people who do that? Because there's a lot in this that I think. Have you tried finding constitutional attorneys that maybe would help you? Because there's a bunch of them out there.
I've been trying to find like common law attorneys, and there's been a few I've been able to reach out to, but none of them have really. So one of the things that happened when they took my husband is they took our way of earning any money.
Right.
And I've been living off of donations for 2 years. And so when you talk to attorneys about, hey, I need help, it's like, I can't pay you for your work. There's not very many people that will be able to do that. The other thing is again, I'm not dissing our attorney. I don't entirely trust him. There's a lot that bothers me, but my husband likes him. And I will say that I've seen him put a lot of into this that I've never seen another attorney do. So granted, there are things I wish he'd have done, but I guess I'm just.
So is he an attorney you guys hired, or is he a court appointed?
He's a public defender.
Yeah. So an employee of the very state that's doing this.
It does bother me that the same. But like I said, I'm not dissing him. I have a lot of respect for him. There's just a lot to this that worries me, because it's like everything that we're up against is like it's orchestrated by the same entity that's trying to destroy us.
Yeah.
And it's hard to picture this as being unbiased.
Yeah. So how does the appeals process work? You guys have already filed for an appeal, or do
you have to wait? From what I understand, you have to wait 15 days until after sentencing to do anything.
So whatever the sentence is, you will appeal, right? It won't make any difference what it is.
Well, we have really strong a strong basis for appeal.
Yeah. And I just don't know the laws of your state and how that all works, but I would think you could get a new judge. There's no way that the same judge can hear the same case in an appeals. I wouldn't think.
I've got the impression it would be a different judge, but I'm very naive with all that.
Yeah, well, you can't ask the same judge that ruled on the case to listen to an appeal of the case. You'll get a new judge for the appeals process. So to tell me, how often do you get to talk to your husband?
Well, it's 20 cents a minute. I'm not allowed to go see him. They were doing virtual visits, but they shut those off. I haven't seen his face in almost a month now. I'm supposed to be able to visit with him this weekend, but we haven't been able to get through, so I don't know if they'll let us.
Yeah, how's he holding up?
He's taking this better than I am. As far as his spirits go, he's hanging in there, but his health has declined, and he was thin when they took him, and he's burning muscle now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, I hope you guys get a chance to visit in, face to face this weekend. I think that'd be great. for you guys. Is there kind of, as we close all of this out, I'm just kind of curious, if I was to ask you, and if you can't answer this because of the case, I completely understand, but what did you guys do wrong?
I'm not sure what you mean by that question.
What I mean is, if you could go back and do it again, I mean, obviously I wouldn't have talked to this guy, I wouldn't have talked to this guy, but is there any, from your perspective, how would have you guys played this out differently if you could go back and do it again?
I wouldn't have changed anything.
Okay.
I think it's important for us to have the freedom of speech,
Of course,
and the freedom to teach people, and the freedom to give people the benefit of the doubt,
yeah,
and let them decide how they're going to use their knowledge. And people have a right to be able to, just like they have a right to have a gun. They have a right to be able to know how to use that gun, not just how to pull the trigger, but how to use the tactics, so that when you're trying to defend for your life, that you can. I mean, that's what makes us different from and all the other countries where these people, you have genocide going on.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've thought about it over and over and over again. And one of the reasons why they tried so hard to scare him into pleading guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And they even came with a plea offer that was like a slap in the face for us, because it would have let him come home, that like he would have been done. They would have let him come home right away if he'd have taken that plea deal. But it was like, I can't take this plea deal and be able to look at myself in the mirror, was basically what he told me. And I just, I'm not guilty of this, and I'm not going to plead guilty just because they want me to.
Yeah.
That's just my take on it.
Yeah, that's crazy, because you'd be so tempting to just go ahead and take it so you could be home,
Well, a lot of people do. I mean, that's 97% conviction rate. He has a friend in there that fled just so that he can get out.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an insane, crazy story. And first of all, I'm sorry you're going through it. I'm sorry that your kids are going through it, because I'm sure they miss their dad. Right.
Well, there's also some trauma involved. I'm not going to say we don't have nightmares. And my kids are, when they came to our house, it was, anytime somebody they don't know comes, they ask if they're going to get taken away.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so unfair. They're completely innocent, of everything. So unfair. And you would think that and there's a lot of cases in history, Randy Weaver, or, the Branch Davidians, or all of this, where, the kids, pay a huge price for this. And I'm sad they had to go through that. And you would think that we would be smart enough as a country that even if we thought something was wrong, we could do it with a little more delicacy. Is there anything else you'd like the audience to know?
I'm trying to think about how to word this. I think that there's a lot of people that have fear of what's happening in our country, and that's what prevents them from doing anything. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that my husband was taught is that no action is worse than any action. And I'm going to, again, enforce that we are peaceful. I'm not saying anything about doing anything against the law, or, I believe in the law of the land. I believe in our country. I'm patriotic. No matter what's been done to our family, I still believe in our country. But I think the thing that's destroying our country is that fear, and that allowing them to just tear us away from each other, so that it's self-preservation. And I think what we need to do is not to be afraid, and let God have control. And if something's wrong, then it's wrong, and that you shouldn't be afraid to stand up for it, and use your voice and speak out and say, this is wrong, and let God decide whether or not you're going to get in trouble for it. But there should not be a repercussion for you using your voice to warn others that this is wrong, or to say this is wrong. And it's really frustrated me, a lot of people that were afraid to even talk to me because they were worried that their own families would be taken. Mm-hmm. Now, you can't tell me that there's not something wrong with our country, right, when your neighbor is afraid to talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super, super scary, that just talk can put you where you're at today. So how do people get a hold of you if they want to support you? if they want to get a hold of you, if they want to follow the story, where can they go? Can you give me some more resources?
So I have a donation page.
Okay.
It's at givesendgo.com/free kit. And it just basically, I've kept a timeline of events and just sending updates on what's happened. So if they want more information, they can read that timeline. This literally just skims the surface. I mean, this is such a deep can of worms.
Yeah. So that timeline is in that
yes, it's on that page.
Okay. Anywhere else they can get a hold of you? Anywhere else they can get involved? I mean, anything else they can do for you?
Well, I don't know exactly the best way. All I want is like their voice, and my biggest concern is to spread awareness, because if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. They're literally paving the road to your front door.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the best way you can support is to share and to tell people what's happened. There's another interview that I'm on that was done with Neethi, and I mean, I can give you the link for that. It also gives you more information.
Yep. And I'll link all of these things in the description of the video.
Yeah, I just think the key point here is awareness, and not to be afraid to use your voice and say this is wrong. And I think that the more people use their voice and expose, here's my thought is, enough people knew about this would really bring out a lot of the dirt underneath the rug. Mm-hmm. And there's more dirt under the, I'm certain there's stuff I don't know about.
Oh, of course.
I mean, like if we can just expose all of it, I mean, let the truth be heard. I am not going to hide anything, you know, and what we can compare and see who the bigger criminal is.
Yeah. Who the bigger criminal is. Oh my goodness. We could rant on that for a year, couldn't we? You know, that's an easy one. But all right, cool. So I'm going to link all of these things. Amy, send me that stuff so I make sure I can get that, specifically that one page, so I can get that in the video before I publish it. But Amy, I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm sorry you're going through these things. And you know, me and my wife have a great relationship, and I couldn't imagine spending a day without her. Just couldn't even imagine what you're going through and what your kids are going through. And I hope you guys find peace and you guys heal through this. And I hope in the end your husband gets justice.
I appreciate that. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Yep, I pray for that. And I will also spread this out to some of the bigger channels that I know, to see if maybe I can get you on a couple more shows or a couple more interviews where you can tell the story. And we'll see if we can at least get the story told. And, you know, people can read, you know, both sides and they can decide for themselves, but they're not going to be able to decide for themselves if we can't tell both sides of the story.
Right.
Right. And this is why it's so important that you come on this morning. And I hope you didn't mind my directness. I just had the article up and I was just reading it, you know.
Well, I mean, it needed to be addressed. I mean, if you're not afraid of the truth, then you shouldn't be afraid of being asked questions.
That's right. Amen. I appreciate that. And you hang in there, and I can tell you have a lot of pain, and I'm sorry for that pain. And I'm hoping that, I'm hoping that it heals, and I'm hoping that, you know, your husband will come home soon. Okay.
And my kids.
Oh, yes. Oh, forgot. Yeah, no doubt. And for sure, you know.
Yeah. My girl, she's 16 now. So.
Yeah. Yeah, how crazy is that? Well, you know, I guess the one good news to being 16 is it won't be long and she'll be 18.
Yeah, but I don't know if she'll try to find me. She's been told a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well, they've been through a lot of trauma. That's a lot.
Well, and my ex has made sure that they know how horrible my husband is, and he's told them it's illegal to talk to me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but you know, here's the thing: is that that child's going to be 18 at some point, and be able to make their own decisions. And you know, no matter what anybody says, he can't take away her memories.
I sure hope she remembers, and I hope that she'll have a desire to try to find the truth. And honestly, I keep hoping that if I can get this exposed, that the backlash will be swift enough that she can come home and my son can come home. And what they did was. Crackheads get treated better than this.
Yeah. It's certainly not fair, and but nothing is in this world, unfortunately. And we need to exercise that peaceful civil disobedience. We need to exercise that in a peaceful and way, as you know, because I don't want innocents to get hurt. And I can tell Amy, you don't want innocents to be hurt either, you know. And
Well, I think I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
good.
I think that our country predicates upon structure, and
Mhm.
that's what makes us free. Is that, I mean, anarchy was never freedom, because that jeopardizes the innocent as well as the guilty. And
Mhm.
so I think that our country's checks and balances can still be utilized. It's just they're not being, the checks and balances has
Mhm.
fallen. So we need to reincorporate those checks and balances. And you'd find a lot of information that would help with that, with the interview I did with Neethi.
Mhm.
But I agree. I'm peaceful. We are peaceful people, and I believe in the law of the land.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a way through the law of the land to have this righted.
Keep swinging, and I'll do some thinking for you and some praying for you for sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, cool. We'll see you next time.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I'm going to, as I mentioned, I'm going to link everything down into the description. I think there's some interesting points to be made about this case. The first thing is that if the informant from the powers that be had a recording, no matter what happened, that should be available to not just the family so that they can hear it. Should also be available to the jury, right? I mean, because the truth doesn't mind being told, and so I think that's a big inconsistency. There is that if had that informant's audio been helpful to the prosecution's case, they certainly would have played it, in my opinion. I also think that both sides agree on a few things. One being that besides the suspect, no one else was hurt, right? Nobody died from it other than at the hands of the powers that be when the shootout happened and the suspect, who lost their lives. And so when, Amy talks about how they're going to sentence him and he should get life, I think that the penalty should fit the crime, and that doesn't make any sense to me. But again, I'm not there, and I certainly don't know all the details. And so I think the other thing that both sides would agree is that nothing that Mr. Arthur was doing in his normal day-to-day practices, his business, was against the law. What got him in trouble is the allegations that he knew one of his students was up to no good, and he just continued on anyway. But what I encourage you guys to do is look at the links, read through them, go over to Neethi the pharmacist page. Right, she did an interview with this young lady as well, and she would have asked different questions, than I asked. Also, if you think that Amy and her family aren't getting a fair shake, there's in links below, there will be places where you guys can support them. But I think from a prepping perspective and from a homesteading perspective and from all of these, these kinds of things, your intent of what you're doing all the time doesn't necessarily matter, right? Because things can be twisted and can be, construed to be, other things. So I would encourage everybody to practice discernment and, understand that it's not necessarily what actually happens that matters, but what can be alleged. And I think those things are super important for us to keep in mind. Again, I want to make sure that I stress this as we close this video out in the end, that as a freedom journalist, my goal is to just get the truth out, whatever that is. And if there are people out there who are trying to create a situation to hurt the innocent, no matter who they are, no matter who they work for, no matter what side of the political aisle they stand on, no matter what race, what creed, or what gender, if there's people out there who are looking to hurt other people in this peaceful environment that we live in today, you're 100% wrong, and you should absolutely be punished for such acts. But I prefer the peaceful method, and you guys have heard me talk many times about how we should be practicing peaceful civil disobedience. And I think that's the best way there, because violence is just not the answer to this, and you just can't win it that way. But anyway, I hope you guys can weed your way through this, and you'll come to your own conclusions, and that's a great thing. Like we said, the truth doesn't mind being told, right? Well, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Tag out.